We all know a train is a perfect vessel for a story. It's contained yet takes our characters on a journey. Any number of events could take place. Murder, romance, perhaps even hot chocolate. That is gross. In today's episode of Thrift Games, we are going to be taking a look at some iconic train media. The Polar Express for the Game Boy Advance. I obtained this game in a bargain bin at a game store, so while it maybe isn't kind of thrifting, it feels like thrifting, there's something very thrift adjacent about digging through a bin of second-hand Game Boy Advance games, and the Polar Express here was about $1.50. In 1985, Chris Van Allsburg would publish a children's story about a child's adventure on a train to the North Pole. No murders involved. The success of this novel led to a creation of a movie in the 2000s. It was loved by elementary school teachers nationally for being a film that they could show to their students on the day before winter break when everyone was way too rowdy to actually learn anything. The film was released in 2004, which if you've somehow managed to forget, was the absolute peak of tie-in movie video games. The Incredibles got a game, Scooby-Doo 2 Monsters Unleashed got a game, Barbie as the Princess and the Pauper got a game. That I am a girl like you. And the Polar Express? Well, you may have heard of Christmas movies, but allow me to introduce you to the Christmas game.
It's no greater gift.
Released 8 days before the movie came out in 2004, the Polar Express game was created for the PlayStation 2, GameCube, computer, and of course, Game Boy Advance. And can I just say, if the Wii had existed at the time, this 100% would have been on the Wii, and there would have been some sort of like motion control snowball throwing game or something like that. This is like the perfect sort of thing for a Wii game. In fact, the PlayStation 2 version even had iToy support, which if you don't know was a camera add-on for the PlayStation 2, which allowed for some motion capturing.
With iToy, you can drive the train or decorate the Christmas tree.
So basically, again, this was built for the Wii before the Wii existed. THQ developed the PlayStation, GameCube, and PC versions of the game, whereas Tantalus developed the Game Boy Advance version. Let's go ahead and take a look into Tantalus media for a bit, because they are actually huge. Founded in Melbourne in 1994, Tantalus has actually worked on over 100 different games in its 28 years. The company worked on making games for licensed properties, but also did some porting, as well as did have some original IPs. Their best-selling original game, or IP, was actually Pony Friends for the Nintendo DS. The overlap between gamer girls and horse girls is insane because it's like almost a circle. I think any girl who was a horse girl and couldn't afford a horse had horse games. And they had so many different horse games. Okay, that's my horse girl tangent for now, but like shout out to the horse girls are gamer girls. Tantalus also invented CRIS, C-R-I-S, or the Character Render Interactive System. This was a procedure which made it possible to render 3D mesh on handheld systems like the Game Boy Advance. Their website is still up and running today, and you can look at information about the past games that they released, such as the Polar Express. On the webpage for that, they highlight that it utilizes the CRIS engine, that clips of the film are displayed as cutscenes, and that it's based on the roller coaster-like sequences that punctuate the action of the film. The Polar Express is an action film.
Yeah, he's gonna probably throw her right off the rear platform. It's standard procedure.
The games, of course, also had an ad, which I do feel like I distinctly remember seeing. Interestingly enough, though, no footage in the game is the footage from the Game Boy Advance version. You can tell which was the most loved child in this situation. That being said though, of course, the Game Boy Advance sold incredibly well. They were really widely available. Their lifespan was super long. From the release of the original Game Boy Advance to well into the DS's life, they were still releasing games for it. This was an incredibly popular handheld console. So it makes complete sense to port games onto it. But the number of games that really should have never had Game Boy Advance ports is just so astronomically high. The gameplay and graphical restrictions make it such a different beast to develop games for and to play on. I'm really curious if there are any Game Boy Advance game ports that are considered to be as good or maybe even better than their GameCube or PlayStation 2 counterparts. I just don't feel like they ever translated from one to the other super well. There's a reason why so many games for today are worth so little, despite the fact that other games released during the same generational period are often now worth a lot more than what they originally released for. I'm looking at you, GameCube. Like, even with the nostalgia factor, they're still just bad games. This porting down to a significantly different console isn't something that we really see anymore. Most consoles today are capable of maintaining similar graphics, 3D rendering, and gameplay. Even mobile versions of games today tend to do a pretty good job of creating a similar, if not almost identical, gameplay experience. Another thing we just don't see much of anymore is the tie-in movie game in general. There was a point in the mid to late 2000s where almost every movie that came out had a tie-in game. Like, sure, there are still games based off of franchises such as Barbie, LOL Surprise, Paw Patrol, but they don't tend to be tied to a specific movie that's released in the same way as they have in the past. And the idea now of a game being created specifically around a holiday movie as well feels a bit odd, to say the least. App tie-in games are still pretty common, but they tend to not follow the plot of the game and more so use characters from the games in more simple app game modes like match 3s with Moana and stuff like that. The Polar Express game has also gained kind of a cult following, mostly for the fact that it's like not a great game, based off of a weird property, and we just have general nostalgia for that period of our lives. And as with many other things in life, people just like to make fun of stuff. Alright, now I know I've said some pretty flattering things about the game. Let's go ahead and Polar this Express.
On Christmas Eve, many years ago, I lay quietly in my bed. I was listening. I was afraid of Santa.
This game is a game. I hope you like platformers with repetitive Christmas vibe music, because that is what this is. Our favorite. When I first was playing this, I actually had it on my GB operator. The GB operator lets me use Game Boy and Game Boy Advance games on my computer, which is super handy, but I had it like widescreen and I was like blasting the music into my senses, and let me just say, that is not the best way for this game to be appreciated. My eyes and brain were like fried within an hour. Just having the graphics that large and having the music
digging into my soul
was not a good time. Lesson learned. I pretty quickly decided to stop the music and started listening to instead a deep dive into Petscop, which honestly was probably the only safe way to play this game. Also did scare me. I was trying to do laundry at the same time. I was walking down that hallway and I was like, this is the most unsettling experience of my life. Video games are haunted. The Polar Express is haunted.
It's all a bunch of humbug!
So the gameplay for this game can be divided up into about 4 different sections. The platforming, duck and jump on a train, control the train, and Flappy Bird. Platforming is a majority of the gameplay, with you being able to crawl, jump, climb, and move objects in order for you to be able to collect candy canes, the game's collectibles, or bells, 3 of which are needed to complete each level. A little fun fact for you, you can also run, a fact that I didn't know until I had completed the first 5 levels. I was trying to 100% the game because something about platformers unlocks a thing in my brain which makes me really annoying and unable to play video games for fun. And I was getting so upset about these 2 candy canes that I just couldn't reach, and I was like, this is impossible, the game is broken. Moral of the story is check the game's controls before you spend 4 hours having to walk everywhere in a platformer. Just like,
learn from my failings.
We got plenty of time.
the duck and jump on a train section is based on the skiing scene, where a child and man team up to ski down a train. I believe in the movie they're actually skiing down next to the train, but for some reason in both versions of the game they were like, no, we're going on the train. This section I actually really liked because it reminded me of my favorite game. It was Edge. I love this game. Where you do something similar from the first-person perspective. I actually looked it up and realized that the console version is also from like the front point of view instead of the side point of view. Okay, hopping on here as editor voice because I realized I'm wrong. So the non-Game Boy Advance versions of the games have 2 separate sections. One of them is where you're running on the train, which is what reminds me of Mirror's Edge, and the other one is you're skiing with the guy. But in the skiing with the guy segment, you're not skiing on the train like in the movie and the Game Boy Advance game. So, I don't know. that is it. Which means, did the Polar Express inspire Mirror's Edge? Or is there just an entire subgenre of duck and avoid on a train style gameplay? Like, is this like a built known thing? Or is this just the unconscious human brain that wants the risk and reward of jumping around on top of a train and we simply can't ignore its calling? Put us on the train. We yearn for the train. The train controlling section is where you control the train. Because children, the people that we don't trust to drive smaller vehicles, should be able to drive larger vehicles.
You're driving a train? They put me in charge.
This section is one of my least favorites. There are a few of them throughout the game, and I disliked it because you can't 100% it the first try. You have to try it multiple times, no matter what, because you have to learn what ways you have to go. Like, it's just the way the game works, and I didn't like that, because I was trying to 100% it. I didn't. Fun fact. The last level is Flappy Bird. It's literally just Flappy Bird. You're flying Santa's balloon of presents, and you don't want to hit obstacles, and it's Flappy Bird. The graphics are both good and bad. The good is that the character runner interactive system that Tantus invented, whatever it is, looks really good, and in my opinion does do a good job of rendering 3D artwork and models within a limited space. That being said, the color palette can be a bit muddled at times. Oh my god, especially in the Lost Toys section. It's time to admit something to all of you. I never grew up with a Game Boy Advance. I bought this one this year. My first handheld console was the DS. So, I have one question. How did people see things with this? How did you see the gameplay? How did people do it? I could not figure out the good lighting for the life of me, especially for this section of the game. I was at my parents' house for Christmas, and I just had like a lamp directly above me playing underneath it, like eyes so close, because it's just like such a muddy area of the game, and the screen is already so dark because it doesn't have backlighting. It was suffering. Anyways, if anybody has a Game Boy Advance light attachment that they do not want anymore, let me know. So I got about halfway through the game before I decided that I've evolved past the need for Game Boy Advance platformers, aka I wanted to play Fortnite, and just have not been able to get myself to sit down and play it again. It's been a while since I've seen the movie or even read the Polar Express book, but I just had zero engagement with the plot, zero engagement with the gameplay. I'm even a fan of like music typically for these consoles, and I couldn't. I was done with it. Time to go back to my dreams of Victory Royale.
Hey, where you going?
Home.
Oh, okay.
On that note, it seems like I'm not alone when it comes to the mediocre reviews of this game. Most of the critic reviews I was able to find for the Game Boy Advance version were not very good. The highest was a 63 out of 100, the lowest being a 20, specifically by a French company. It's French people. Gotta get their Christmas games right. The non-Game Boy Advance version of the game also doesn't receive rave reviews, so kind of makes sense to me that a not great game would do kind of worse on a handheld port. Some specific reviews I want to highlight. There's one from DSX2 from 2005, which highlights that whilst the production values in the Polar Express are undoubtedly very high, which I agree with, it does suffer from being a bit of a one-act game, as once you've done one platform section, they do start to look all the same. This isn't just visually either, as they generally have similar objects, with the only break occurring when you enter one of the few 3D sections. Completely agree with that. That was my experience. Another review more harshly notes, this was from My Gamer in 2004, I hope no child receives this game from Santa. Receiving this game as a Christmas present is worse than getting a lump of coal. The bogged down play control, the tasteless graphics, and weak gameplay concepts make the Polar Express a title that should be avoided at all costs, which is harsh, but frankly kind of true. I would be, though grateful to get a video game as a child, disappointed with this specific one. This copy that I have even had a past save on it from the previous owner, and they had only made it to level 7 as well, so hypothetically even a child that hopefully didn't have as broken of an attention span as I do couldn't get through this game. The one situation I could see myself getting really into this game is if I had my DS with my backlight, I was on a road trip with my family for like 9 hours, there was nothing else I could do, and we had an audiobook playing. I could imagine myself turning down the music, getting into the audiobook, and just zoning out, pressing some buttons, hopping over stuff, because I literally had nothing else to do. That is the one case scenario I could see myself really enjoying the Polar Express. There are simply so many better games out there, and better games for the Game Boy Advance. Like, Mario Tennis for the Game Boy Advance, I have played through so many times. It is such a good game, I love it. This is bad. I just don't think any piece of this is engaging enough to stand up on its own. And it's just so weird that this even exists. Like, it makes sense, sure, but it's still weird. It's almost as weird as the fact that Tom Hanks was originally supposed to play every character in the movie. Just an entirely Tom Hanks cast. What could have been. Alright, thank you for joining me for my late Christmas special. Happy New Year's, everyone! I hope you all have been doing well. If you're enjoying these thrift game videos, please make sure to let me know in the comments down below. I do have a couple more of them planned, as well as I would like to do some other sort of deep dives into things that I just find interesting. We know I love doing that. I want to give a shout out to my Twitch subs for helping to fund my interests, and my subscribers for sticking around with me. Anyone who likes or comments on my videos, you're amazing. If you share them, you're also amazing. Thank you all so much. I very much just enjoy, of course, doing weird things on this platform. I hope you all are doing well, have a great start to the year, and I will see you all next time.